All right. Well, hello, everyone. I want to say happy Thankful Thursday. Today, I am super excited to welcome on two special guests. As you know, we are doing a series here at Beyond the Busyness on supporting the Black men in our lives. And we know that right now, with everything that's going on in our country, our Black men are under attack in many different ways. But the thing is, we know and love so many awesome Black men. And I'm really excited to share two kings with you today, two people I know very, very well. And they're actually going to share their perspective with you. So, welcome in. Let us know where you are watching from. Thank you so much for watching, sis. I see you there. Let us know where you're here from. And if there's any questions that you have along the way while we are talking, please post them in the chat. I'll also show them on screen. And thank you all so much. So we're going to take a moment actually and share, because I want to make sure that this gets out to as many ladies as possible. So if you hey Britt, hey Mika, hey girls, I'm so glad you are here today. Thank you for always supporting me in the wonderful ways that you do. Please, Britt, if you don't mind sharing to your Facebook group, I am going to share to the Beyond the Busyness group, and then I'm going to do a watch party to my personal page. So go ahead and start sharing, because I'm sure there's other ladies out there who may not be familiar with Beyond the Busyness, but definitely want to hear this topic. So here we go. I am going to start sharing, because sharing is absolutely caring. All right, so I shared over there, and I'm going to head up my watch party on my personal page, and then we are going to get started. Okay, excellent. Okay, so we got quite a few ladies. So ladies, let us know where you're watching from. And again, if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to put them in the comments. So ladies, my name is Mia Bradford, and I am super excited to welcome you all today. I am the proud founder of Beyond the Busyness, and my goal is to create a new definition of self-care, which encompasses holistic wellness, physical, emotional, and financial well-being. So today, our topic, as I mentioned earlier, is supporting the Black men in our lives, and this is part 2 of our series. And I'm being joined today by two special guests. So you're actually going to hear from two Black men on their perspective on what do they need during this time. So without further ado, I am going to introduce them to you. And if you have not already, please share, please do a watch party on your personal pages, and make sure that ladies who need to hear this, who have a man, who don't have a man, maybe they got a brother, they got an uncle, they have a son, they need to hear this. Like, how can we support our men during this time? So I would like to introduce you to Mr. Dennis Boyd. Dennis is an advocate for men and well acquainted with the challenges Black and Latino men face. For several years, he has designed and implemented interventions for Black and Latino young men from third grade through undergrad, led men's groups, led and served as an advisor to men's ministry. In 2014, he founded Mothers with Sons to provide Black and Latino moms with resources, tools, and a community via seminars to enhance their dynamic relationships with their sons. So let's just say Mr. Boyd is an expert on all things men. And then we have Mr. Julius Bayonne. He's the founder and executive director of his very own nonprofit, which I'm sure he'll share with you, Mission Transformation. And he is a Louisiana native and graduate with high honors from Southern University. He earned his degree in business marketing and honed his skills as an account manager for various corporations before establishing Mission Transformation Corp. So without further ado, ladies, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Dennis Boyd and Mr. Julius Bayonne. So we're going to jump into our questions. But Dennis and Julius, if you wouldn't mind, before we start, if you could share something about yourself, like where you're from, what you're currently working on, and what your interests are, just to give the audience a little bit more familiarity with you. And Julius, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. Again, Julius Bayonne, Alexandria, Louisiana, born and raised. Again, full-time nonprofit. We work with boys ages 9 to 13. They extend our program until they're 18. And we provide an array of services for them: mental health, financial literacy, STEM education, and leadership and development. Some things I like to do: work out, of course, read. Again, community service. I love helping. I love helping others. I love giving. Concerts, travel, dinners. Normal stuff that most men like to do.
Okay, well, I'm glad to know most men like to do that too. Thank you, Julius, for that great introduction.
So I am Dennis Boyd. I am a New York native who's in Austin, and background, I'm native New Yorker from Queens. I think it's important to note that I have a social work background, so a lot of what I say and a lot of what you'll hear from me is going to come filtered through that lens. It's also important to note, in the event that you haven't noticed, that I am a Black man, so I've had tons of experience being one. So I'll be bringing that as well. Another thing that I think is important is that I will be sharing it from the context of coming from a family where I was loved simply because I showed up. That's important because I'm not speaking from the perspective of the men who may not have experienced what I have, but I will also be speaking from the perspective and the vantage point of the men that I've counseled, worked with, shared meals with, and time with, and kind of what we call in our community cut blood with over the years, their perspectives. So you'll be hearing varying perspectives from me to kind of provide a overarching view. Thank you.
Thank you both. Great introductions. So, ladies, if you are watching in the Beyond the Business group or on my personal Facebook page and you have a comment, come on over to the Beyond the Business page. That way, myself and the panelists can view your comments and answer your questions. So just wanted to let you know that. So, guys, we are getting quite a few views here. Hey, Keith, it's good to see you. So we're getting y'all.
Is that Keith Forrest?
Yeah, Keith Forrest is in the house over here on my personal page. So
all right, Keith.
Yes. There's a lot of people y'all know that are watching. So excellent. So let's jump into our discussion for today. So the first question I have for you is, can you describe what it is like being a professional Black man, knowing that racism and injustice still exist? And what is it like to go about life day to day? So either one of you can start, whoever's ready.
I'll jump in. So being a Black man and being here in a world where there is racism, there's prejudice, and there's bias, it's a few things. Number one is I subscribe to the Bible. So that first and foremost for me is what grounds me. Number two, I recognize where there may be racism, prejudice, and biases that I have experienced. I still always recognize that I'm not looking to people as my source. I look to God as my source. So that's number one. Number two is I know that I'm exceptionally gifted at what I do. So number three is everyone isn't supposed to say yes to me because I'm not for everyone. And that's important. And number four for me is when I'm a guy who really enjoys being around people. So I am surrounded by a lot of people who love me, not because of what I can do for them, not because I have this relationship where they're trying to get something from me. People love me truly for who I am. And that gives me life when I'm feeling beat down from coming back from being out in the world, having to compete or working as a consultant. Those are the things that pour and fill me up. I have people who remind me of who I am when I begin to lose sight of that, or if I begin feeling beat down by the world that I actually live in.
Yeah.
Wow. So basically you're saying you have a good, strong support system. So even when things are not going maybe in the direction you want them to go, you have a support to encourage you to get you back on track.
Thank you. Very succinctly and well put.
That's amazing. So guys do need support. They do need a support system.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's go for it, Julius.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great. I mean, as a single man, I can speak, being in corporate America as a Black man, being single, not having, that outlet, not being able to have a safe space to talk to people. I'll never forget, when my first couple of years in corporate America, I was the youngest executive on my team, and my counterparts were all white, mid to late 40s, and they did not respect me. They did not give me the respect that I deserved as elite talent, having the ability to come in and do the work and perform at a high level. Just like this is just a little black kid, and that's how they treated me, And so when I would go home, I had no outlets, right? I had no safe space. I couldn't be vulnerable, and it was depressing because like I had never felt like such an outcast. I never felt like, hey, this is in a platform where nobody supports me. So I didn't know where to go, who to talk to, how to reach out. And so it was tough for me, and it actually kind of led to me starting my nonprofit because I said, I never want people like me, a black man like me, to ever feel like this again. You have to have an outlet. You have to have somebody that you can go to, that you can speak with every day. And so it's really hard because, I don't have a wife, right? I don't have that partner I do life with every day to talk to about my problems, talk to about my issues being a black man, because it is really tough out there because, even though we're in a corporate world, I still live in Black America, even when I go to work, and I understand that. So, it's tough. It's even tough. It's still tough now, even when I do business with sponsors or donors. They still are not respecting me as the man that I am, and the work and the accomplishments and the accolades I have. So it's still been tough, but now I have great friends, strong support systems who I can come to and talk about these things to be an overcomer, right? And so like Dennis talked about, my faith is so strong in God now to where I look to Him, number one, as my source. I count on Him. I depend on Him. So as long as that's understood, this battle is going to continue. This fight's going to continue, for years to come. But we have to be aggressive. We have to make sure that we have the right resources and the right people around us connected to us to be able to overcome these things.
Exactly. Thank you for sharing that, because it's sometimes I've heard from other male friends, it's not easy to be vulnerable as a male. There's not a lot of safe spaces that are created for you all to be who you are, just authentically, and not be judged or treated differently or treated as less than. So that's important, ladies. If you have a man that comes home to you, are you that safe space for him, where he can be vulnerable or cry or be angry and it's not a problem? Yeah. So that's really important. Yep.
So one of the things I want to add to this conversation, and it may be premature or not, but we'll find out, is for people like Julius just talked about not having someone that he can really share and be vulnerable with. And from all of the years of working with young men, working with men, men's ministry, I want to encourage women and people who love men to encourage him to get engaged in community. Because what happens, and what I've seen, witnessed, and experienced, is that men stay engaged in the community as long as it's comfortable and as long as it's fun. So if we get together to talk about sports, they show up. If we get together to talk about, what's going on in the world, they show up. When we start talking about what's going on with you personally, like where you at with your goals, like that's when men begin to kind of just like drop out. When you start asking them like, okay, you still struggling with that thing that you were struggling with? You may see him this time, but next month the chances are he may not show up. And I've seen and been a part of men's groups that will start with 20, 50 guys and dwindle down to 2 to 3 guys over the course of maybe 12, 13, 14, 15, maybe 16 months at best. So encouraging men to stay engaged in community, even when it's uncomfortable, is beneficial. Number 2 is encourage them to go to therapy. Like taboo, it's time to really put the therapeutic thing and how taboo that is to the side, because I can say I've benefited from it, and making sure that you have a space to help you process things that may be triggers that have stemmed from childhood is critical. And if he's in a relationship dynamic, if you're a woman who's working to support him, he may have a trigger that's actually triggering you. So the truth is, like, being in therapy is going to be beneficial to that relationship, to help you understand all of the different nuances that are going on in that relationship, because everyone is bringing to that relationship everything in each of your lives individually to that juncture collectively. And instead of unpacking 2 bags, instead of unpacking 1 bag, we're now unpacking 2. So just really being intentional about encouraging him to stay connected.
I love that. Thank you for that insight, Dennis. So this is great for like, female friends, encouraging your male friends to get into community, stay in community, even when it gets tough, and to seek therapy if that's something that they need or desire. So thank you for that, Dennis. So my next question is, how can your thoughts, feelings, and reactions impact your relationships?
Well, great. I'll take a stab at it first. It really depends on what type of relationship you're addressing, right? So whether that's with your friends, with your spouse, significant other. Again, I think only can speak of my experience, right? Days when you're frustrated. When I've dated before, when I've come home from work or when I've had a chance to spend time, being so frustrated with being judged or being an outcast or different things like that. You tend to act out. You tend to show a side of you that you don't want to show, because that's not who you are, and it can create a toxic environment because, again, like Dennis said, you're not in community, you don't have that outlet, you don't have that safe space, right? So, for me, I had to learn how to wind down before, I would spend time with, a person that I would date, because that's another battle. When you walk in the house, that's another battle. You just got defeated. Right. And when you get home, they're going to talk about their day. They want to talk about work and just tell you about all these amazing things, all these bad things that happen. And you're not mentally there. So you have to wind down before to go to have that battle. So I think that's a great key that we don't do. Sometimes we just go straight home, or we don't sit in the car and breathe or pray or take the time just to wind down before we go home. And really that's when you see frustrations, or that's when maybe your wife or your girlfriend feels like they're not being heard, they're not being talked to, they're not being respected, and it just creates a toxic environment. So it's super important that when you're married or you are dating, that you understand, as a Black man, we don't come home with the same happiness that a white man does, and so we have to, again, wind down, battle that, think about the day, think about how difficult that is, and then go to another battle once you open the door. So, I just want women to understand how difficult that is to be, 8 to 5 every day. You're performing at a high level, still not getting the respect, not getting the promotion, right? Not getting rewarded for your work, not being looked at as a potential candidate for other great positions within the company. That's hard. That's hard to deal with when you have that talent. That's hard to deal with when you have to talk to people who don't respect you, who don't look at you in the light as a leader, as an example, as a face of the company. That's very difficult. So in itself, I would just say that I think to eliminate that, you have to have a wind down period before you go into the next battle.
So thank you for sharing that, Julius. There's actually a term for it. It's called transition time.
Okay, great.
Ladies, men need transition time. I need transition time. So it's basically, what that means is that when they go from one activity to another, on work to home, they need space before they can start receiving a whole bunch of stuff. That's how I am. Like, if I'm finished in work and I got to go to my parents' house, I can't just go in, because they start talking and then they want me to be listening, and I'm like, no, I can't do that. So I know how you feel, Julius. Trust me.
Yeah, no, and it
I ain't a man, but I know.
It truly does affect the communication, right? There's going to be a breakdown in communication, and it really is true. And so your thoughts, your feelings, and how you're expressing things in that moment, if you don't have that transition time, it's not going to always be received well. It's not going to always be given well. And so, again, we just have to take the time out to really understand that and respect, again, each other's space in that time. And then let's come together. Let's converse. And let's talk about our days together once we have that time, that transition time.
Exactly. Go ahead, Dennis.
The transition time is mission critical. The other thing that I would add is really understanding who you are as a man first before you walk into situations. So I am a divorcee, and in the first marriage, that was a point of contention for me, because I was coming from really hard days that were toxic, because I was at a point where They were looking to get rid of me and looking for reasons to fire me. Like, so going home and having to hear about somebody else's bad day, what I began to do is sit outside for an hour before I went upstairs. And even with that, it wasn't enough. So adding to that, and Julius already touched on it, is that communication piece is vital. And I encourage women to understand and begin to respect the differences in the communication styles between men and women, or I don't want to make a generalization, between you, yourself, and your partner. Men traditionally, from the men that I've come into contact with, work with, young men, we need time to think and to process before we can actually articulate what we're thinking and feeling, versus women, from my experience, women that I've worked with, coach, ministry, and otherwise, tend to talk through what they're thinking, feeling, and experiencing. So if the expectation is he's going to communicate with you the way that your girlfriend communicates with you, it's going to become problematic, because too often men haven't been taught how to articulate what we're thinking and experiencing. It's always get up, do this. And that starts from the time that we're really young. Suck it up. And we haven't been socialized to emote. So many men don't know how to say, hey, you know what? When you said that, it hurt my feelings. You'll see the reaction, but not understanding that the reaction is only a symptom of what the actual problem was. So if he's feeling demoralized and beat down at work, if he's grappling with low self-esteem, some men don't have the language to say, you know what? I'm feeling really low. Like, I'm feeling undervalued and underappreciated. And when I walk through the door, you didn't even ask me how my day was. Some of us don't have the language to recognize, hey, I don't feel valued and appreciated. And it doesn't have anything, in some cases, to do with what's going on at home. It has everything to happen with what happened during the occurrence of his day. So if he's on a job and he doesn't feel valued and appreciated, if he's at a red light and somebody honks the horn at him, he feels disrespected because now somebody's telling him what to do. Like, these are little straws that are on the camel's back. And by the time he gets home to you, if you're not a safe space, what you may see is like what may appear to be this outburst, but it's just a frustration because he may not have the language and may not have the skill set to be introspective to discover and unearth what the actual problem is. So that communication piece is so critical. He should be able to say to you, hey, I just got in. I didn't want to sit outside for an hour. I wanted to come in and acknowledge you, but I need an hour and a half. I want to take a shower. I want to wind down. I want to decompress. I want to sit on my laptop and decompress on YouTube videos for the next hour, and then I'll be ready to talk to you. But giving him that space is critical. Understanding that he doesn't process information the way that you do is really helpful.
That was a whole word right there. I was like, wow. That's good. I don't even have a language, but that's good to know. I just learned it though. That was good. That was good. So, ladies, sometimes the men don't have the language to express what is really going on. So maybe as a woman, sometimes you have to give him some space, let him breathe, and then come back to him and share your day.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. See? I'm a woman in training. So what are some ways, your loved ones are not helping you to heal and get through difficult seasons? What are some things that we need to avoid and stay away from?
You know what? I want to flip the question the other way. And the reason why, I think if we focus on more of what we need, we'll get more of what we need in order to get through difficult times. And again, I'm speaking from a position of, I know I've been privileged to be surrounded by people who love me just because I showed up. But someone just simply calling, hey, how you doing? How's everything going? Goes, in my world, gives me tons of mileage. Just knowing that someone's thinking about me, knowing that someone just called just to say, hey, just checking to make sure you're all right. Someone just touching you on the shoulder, well, pre-COVID, and letting you know, I appreciate you. Just little things, the simple things that contribute to me feeling valued and appreciated just because of who I am. For the other people who love me, so like there's a gentleman who's I've known since I was about 10 years old, Ruben. Every once in a while I'll call him because I need someone who can recalibrate me and remind me from childhood to where I am presently and show me that, hey, you haven't changed, you've just evolved. But people just being able to pick up the phone, reach out, send an email, those things, you can get a lot of mileage out of those things. But also important and equally as important is people holding you accountable. If you've shared your dreams and your visions with some people, like those people being able to say, hey, it's been 3 months, where are you with this? You said you was going to be working on this, to hold us accountable to make sure that we're still pursuing the things that the goals that we've set. And if we're not, for us, it gives us an opportunity to have the courage to say, you know what, I really don't want to pursue that no more, without any fear of judgment or apprehension about being judged about it. So I think just having people pick up the phone, call you, tell you that they love you, tell you why they love you, extending themselves and just being available, emotionally, or based on who that man is to support him.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Dennis. That was great.
Yeah, Dennis, I can't agree more. I had the same situation today. I have one of my best friends. Just spending time with him earlier today, it rejuvenated me, right? He wants to start a nonprofit, and it's us working together, us, putting the time, encouraging each other, just to see him send me a logo. And I told him, like, dude, I'm so proud of you. Like, man, you're really doing those type of things. And, he loved the comment, and that's rewarding. And a lot of people, I don't think, understand it's okay to be a man and love your boys and encourage them and lift them up and be in their corner and support them, and I think sometimes, on those days are, when I strongly believe, well, what I'm trying to say is I strongly believe that if you're not invested in the person's dream, if you're not invested in their goals, if you're not invested in their happiness, it does not matter what the issue is. It's never going to be right. They're never going to be satisfied. So I think it's important, again, whether in your friendships and your dating life, that you are valuing the person that they are, that they want to be, and that they will be. And so I think that's so unique. I want people to support my dreams. I want people in my corner who are going to support my dreams, who are going to speak life into me, who are going to challenge me to be the best man that I can be, the best leader I can be, the best friend, the best fiance, husband that I can be. Anything less than that is going to be completely unacceptable to me. I don't want to come home, and deal with a battle just because you're upset, and then I have to get that's being taken out on me. I don't want to tell you something I would love as a friend, and you get upset because I'm looking out for your best interest. So I need people around me who are going to be receptive to criticism, who knows I'm going to support them, and vice versa, who I have to be responsive to criticism and love and care and support, and that's going to help me grow. So it's really critical. I don't think a lot of people understand how important it is that you have to invest in who the person is, meet them where they are, and then walk with them, along that journey, because that's what matters. And it's, like Dennis said, it's not about the negativity part of the thing. It's finding those people and being around those people who bring out the best in you every day. And it sounds cliche, but no, I really have friends. I really have people now, my men's group as well. I'm a part of a men's group, and it's completely elevated my life because I can call on these men. They're my accountability partners, and it's just changed the outlook on life. So I don't accept, criticism. People get angry, that's normal, but I don't want any consistent habits like that around me, or people who have those consistent habits around me.
No, I don't have anything else.
Okay. Because I was going to say, talk to me about, teach me, I'm in kindergarten. How do I meet someone where they're at? And how do you approach a gentleman if, something isn't working out and, you want to be respectful, but you need to address the situation?
Do you have a specific example that you'd like to use? a hypothetical or otherwise, or do we need to contrive our own?
I don't have a specific one right now.
Okay.
I'll have to think about it. But if the audience has any questions, you guys can start posting as well, because y'all a quiet audience. My last session, we had so many questions. So we got the men's, ladies. Now y'all need to be asking questions. Y'all was real live last week. No, yeah, I don't really have, I guess just like, I guess it goes because Julius has spoken to me about this before, about meeting people where they are. Britt, you have questions. Please start asking them. I know you do. Come on, ask. That's my homegirl. So, yep, see, she laughing too on me. So, I'm just thinking, like, if you, let's just say in a work situation, for example, and you've requested something from an employee, but they haven't provided you with that information. And, you set a deadline. You say, hey, can I have XYZ? They haven't met the deadline. You say, hey, do you need any support with that? Is there any way I can help you to get this done? And then there's still no response, nothing has changed. How do you because for someone like myself, and I'm just speaking for me, I'm internally motivated. So I don't really need external motivators. So I don't really like motivating people is like, I'm like, like, I don't know. I mean, yeah. So I'll leave it at that.
Julius, you want to jump on that, or
I'll let you take a stab at it, Dennis.
Okay, he's such a gentleman. So I'm gonna wear my HR hat. In some cases, the person may be in the wrong role, and I have found that oftentimes, especially men, when they're in the wrong role, where they're not in the role where they're enthusiastic or excited about, it's difficult for them to be motivated intrinsically because they may not be enjoying the work that they're doing. Now, I'm not minimizing the accountability portion of it, but from an HR perspective, the first thing I would explore is, how does this person actually feel about this role that they're in? Because I've been in roles where I felt demoralized and disrespected because like the work didn't even stimulate me mentally. Like I could do this work from home and y'all are dragging me into the office just for the sake of having me in the office. Like, so I know what that feels like. I know what it's like to be overlooked for a promotion. And I have personally experienced where that impacted my performance, where it's just like, y'all promoted so-and-so over me. Like, yeah, like I'm just going to show up and collect my check. So I think a conversation to provide that person an opportunity to get to the core of the issue, number one. Number two is just encouraging that safe space for him to be honest. Because if he thinks it's just like, I'm going to share my heart and tell you what I really want or why I'm not underperforming or why I just didn't do it,
yeah,
he may not open up. Because if it's about, so many men have been burnt for being honest, that they are always questioning what someone's motives and intentions are when people come to them, personally and professionally. Just tell me how you're feeling and we'll work this out. And then next thing you know, he's being written up. Just tell me how you're really feeling. And, now the relationship is on the rocks. Just tell me how you're feeling. And now you haven't heard from a family member since Thanksgiving. So men have experienced that sense and that feeling of abandonment and distrust so often that we've become jaded, some of us. And again, coming back to not having the language to say, hey, you violated trust. Like I trusted you and you breached trust. You told me that if I did X, Y, and Z, like we had a contract and I kept up my end, but you violated your part, is an important part of trying to figure out what that nuance may be. It's because I can reassure you it's a nuance. It's never just cut black and white. I can reassure you it's never just that simple. When you dig beneath the surface, you're going to be able to find that there was something that happened. You may not be able to know, he may not say when, but there's something that led to this particular moment. So the second part is, how do you deal with it? Hey, John, I've been trying to support you and I need to be able to have an honest conversation with you about X, Y, and Z. When would there be a good time within the next 48 hours that you and I can have this conversation? So now what you're doing is you're telling him what your concerns are, you're itemizing them, and I don't recommend like this laundry list of the past 10 things he's been doing over the past 8 months. Like, keep it minimal of the things that are most important, like right now. So now he knows that he's going to have a conversation about these 3 things. He gets the opportunity to prepare, he gets the opportunity to reflect, and he has the opportunity to come to the table and be able to be honest about what the actual issues are. Before you start that conversation, let him know that you value and appreciate him, that you appreciate him for some things that he's done correctly. Because typically, the only time men hear their name is when they've done something wrong. Yeah. So we start off defensive, and this wall is already up because it's like, okay, especially in the work environment, is my job at stake? Because typically when we only hear our name when something's done wrong, we're concerned about our job. Like, should I be trying to find a new job versus trying to be here? It just becomes so complex and so layered. So you're honoring him and telling him something great that you've noticed about him. Hey, for these past few months, you've did this, this, and this. You've done this exceptionally well. And here's what I've noticed. And these are the things that I want to help you work on. What do you need from me, or what professional developments or trainings do you need in order for you to continue to thrive? I want to see you move forward. The last thing I would always recommend is asking him what his aspirations are, because if you can connect what he wants to do with the work that he's doing, he then becomes intrinsically motivated because it's directly correlated to what's important to him.
I love that. I love that. Guess what? I have some questions from the audience.
Yay.
Oh.
Thank you, Britt and Ty. Appreciate y'all. Those are my 2 girls. So the first question we have for you both is, what if the man isn't open to getting the accountability or the therapy or to growing?
I need context for that. What type of relationship is this?
Okay, so what type of relationship is it? For the person who asked the question, please share so they can have context. And the other question is, how do you meet the man where he is and still hold them to what God has called them to be?
Julius.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So how do you meet them where they are and still hold them to what God has called them to be? Right. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to say is that in any situation, if it's God-based, if God is your foundation, you have to lead with love in everything that you do. Right. So your approach to understand, okay, this is what a man's called to be, right? He's called to lead, he's called to serve, he's called to protect, he's called to cultivate, to do all these things, right? He talks about that in Genesis, right? And so you have to surround him in an environment that presents him as that leader. If not, he's never going to respond in the right way. I think sometimes I love my strong, beautiful women, but sometimes you guys are so strong that there's no area or no room for a man to lead, and he will never understand what he's called to be and what he's called to do if he does not have room to be a leader. I'm not talking about submissive. I'm talking about this room, because men love dynamic, strong, empowered, intelligent women, but we also want that avenue to still lead, right? And so if we're not on a level playing field to where I can start the car and take off and be trusted to lead. If you don't trust us to lead, you've lost us. You've lost us for sure. You've lost most men if you're not trusting them. So you have to understand, you have to create an environment, right, for him. If he's not walking the way you want him to walk, that's fine. First of all, you got to pray for him every day. If you want him to be there, if you want him to be what God has called him to be, you got to pray for him, because God's going to change him. But you also have to create that environment, right? That environment that allows him, again, to protect, to provide, to cultivate, to support, to be everything that he's called to be, so he can continue to build you up as a woman. And once he has that environment, he will flourish in that environment.
Thank you, Julius. Very well said. What I would like to add to that is, what are your intentions? And what is the expectation that you've had? Because what I've seen in whether it's been marriage, engagements, and these dynamics, there are unspoken expectations. So what expectations do you have of him? And Julius talked about, creating that space for him to take the lead, be the lead. But I want to kind of dismantle something a little bit, because we subscribe to traditional gender roles, like a man's supposed to do this and a woman's supposed to do that. What I'd like to introduce is who's the best person for the job, like who has the best skill set. So if he's not the best person with finances, I don't think necessarily he should be leading in the finances. I think if you have the skill set to manage that, then as a couple, that should be an agreement that the two of you have. But I think abandoning traditional roles may be beneficial and helpful, because if you're the person who knows how to change the oil and he's the person who knows how to make tons of money, like it just doesn't make sense for you to be like, well, you need to get up under there and learn how to change the oil. You ain't no real man. Like, no, if you know how to do it and you're the best person for the job, then do it. Like, it's not a big deal, or take it to Jiffy Lube. But finding out what's going to work in the best interest of your relationship, number one, but what's going on with you? What perceptions do you have of him? Did you take on what you knew was a project in the beginning, thinking and hoping that you can actually convert him or make him something other than who he was? Are you leveraging his strengths, or are you trying to make him strong in areas where he actually doesn't have those strengths? So I encourage taking a step back and looking in the mirror and asking yourself, am I really embracing him for who he is? Or am I trying to make him someone that he's not because he fits the package and the mold that I thought he was going to come in? He goes to church every Sunday, he tithes, and he's ticked off a lot of the check boxes. So you think he's actually the best person for you, when in fact he may not be. And now you find yourself in this tension and this tug of war around issues that wouldn't be issues if you were in a relationship with the right person.
So that was,
Dennis, I call that walking with people before you promote them.
Yeah.
my God.
Put that in the chat. Walking with people before. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ooh, walking with people before you promote them. That was a whole word right there, Julie. I wasn't ready for that. I don't promote. Okay, so back to the first question. So I got the context now. The context is for the question. The original question was, what if the man isn't open to getting the accountability therapy or to growing? So this is in a romantic context. Let's just say dating or married. The person has an issue, like there's something you see, maybe a red flag, let's just say, and you're trying to hold them accountable. It ain't working. They don't want to go to therapy. And basically, they're just not really trying to address that issue.
Dennis, can I answer the dating part and you answer the romantic married part? Is it okay with you?
Problem. Go for it.
If it's very simple. If you're dating a man that doesn't want to be held accountable, that doesn't want to go to therapy, or isn't growing, again, you need to start assessing the situation and making the determination to go in another direction. But let me say this. Let me make sure I get you to understand. I come from a 2-parent home. So I have my mother and father. So I got to start off. I got to start off from that point. I have a lot of male friends or guys I grew up with that did not have their dad. So they did not understand accountability. They did not understand that it's okay to go get to have mental health. To go get counseling and do different things like that. So they always, the man's macho, the mantra is there. But you have to understand this. As a woman, if he's not going to commit to doing those things, Dennis has already made a statement. That might not be the person for you. And that's okay. In life, unless you're married, you can get to know somebody. And if it doesn't work, it's okay. You can find that person that fits all those things. There are men out there that actually want to get help, that want to be held accountable, that want to grow. And if that's not him, that's totally fine. That's who he is. That's his DNA. That's his makeup. That's how he's wired, and that's okay. That doesn't make him a bad person because he doesn't want to do those things. You have to have the strength and the wisdom, the understanding, and assess the situation as honestly as you can. Because sometimes we want to work so hard at keeping the relationship, and months and years go by, and we've wasted our time because we're not actually out there pursuing the person that fits what we actually want. Again, you have to walk with people before you promote him. And if you're walking with him and that's just not who he is, if it's been months and months and months or a year, you're not seeing this, it's okay to move on and go in a different direction. At the end of the day, your happiness is what's important. Doing life with the right person that's going to do these things that you ask or work at is super important, right? Because if not, you're going to feel resentment. If not, you're going to go to your girls complaining, right? If not, if you have your mother or your father, you're going to be like, well, he does all these things and everything's going to turn negative. And instead of just gracefully moving out of the situation, keeping your sanity, keeping your joy, keeping your happiness, now you've created the atmosphere of disappointment because he did not live up to what you thought he could live up to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Awesome.
Just
Thank you.
a moment of silence. We just want to let him sit with that for a second. If you're married, you're dealing with a different set of circumstances. I don't know if there's children involved. But the question I would ask a woman, and I'm not abdicating any man of his role or his responsibility, but the question I ask a woman is, who's coaching and counseling you? Because I have seen time and time again where a woman is making these demands and she wants to hold him accountable, but she's only telling one side of the story. So you're only getting one version. And what I've seen is that there was once a time where you had the older generation of women teaching and counseling the younger generation of women on how to navigate marriage, because they were teaching you or teaching women, the older women were teaching the younger women what's really important in the bigger scheme of things. The older women learned from their own experiences and began to share the wisdom of take a look at the bigger picture. Like, is the toilet seat that big of a deal today in the bigger scheme of things? Your brush may have fell in it, and I'm saying I get it. But in the bigger scheme of things, is it that important to the overarching goal and the mission of the family? Do you have goals and a mission as a family? What's moving the two of you in the same direction together? So that's part A. Part B is, who's holding him accountable? I always am going to take it back to what I started with in the beginning. Who's holding him accountable? Who are the closest people to him? Do you have his best friend or his brother's number that you can pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm having a challenge with John. I love him, but this is becoming an issue. Because in some instances, it may require a translator, someone to translate to him what you're saying in the language. They call it mansplaining, where a man can speak to a man and like immediately he gets it, and his woman or his wife is looking at him and like, I've been saying that to you for months, and how come you ain't respond? Like, it's just something that men get. Like, it's like it would be equivalent to you being dropped off in Yugoslavia, not knowing how to speak the language, and taking the time to really invest in how to speak that language, to him specifically. But also that accountability piece. I don't know what your tone is. I don't know what your communication style is. I don't know if you're aggravated or frustrated, but it becomes very, very nuanced. And if you're speaking to him from a place and your disposition is anger, bitterness, resentment, and frustration, it's very tough to communicate with the man that way around those things. I recommend counseling to help the two of you develop the tools to be able to work through those issues, because your girlfriend, your sorority sister may not be the best person to help you see him and your scenario objectively, and getting the tools to navigate the nuances, because remember, you both came with luggage and you're unpacking it at every stage of your relationship, especially if you're married. If you have kids involved, do you want this to spill out in front of the kids? Do you want the kids to be to absorb the unintended consequences of tension in the home? So there's just so many nuances. So if it's a married couple engaged, I highly recommend going to counseling therapy to see if you can develop the tools, and each person having people to hold them accountable in the context of that relationship, and get marriage mentoring. Like, find an older couple to help the two of you work through those challenges that you may be facing.
Thank you both. So 2 more questions, one from the audience and then one last question. Tony says that's so true. Mansplaining is serious. I've had to lean on that option before. So
thank you, Tony.
The ladies are resonating with what you're saying. And there's also some guys watching on my page. So if you have responses to some of the questions too, feel free to put them in the chat, because the more voices we have, the merrier. So my next question comes from the audience, Miss Ty. She says, how can we help Black men reach their highest potential even when society wants otherwise?
I'll start this one. I always tend to start introspective. My question would be, what does he want for himself? Because if you want for him, his goal and his dream more than he wants it himself, there's nothing you can do for him. There's zero that you can do for him. He has to be wholly sold out and committed to his own dream. Yeah, like, if you got to wake him up to pursue his dream, I don't know. He may be wrestling with depression. I mean, he may be struggling with mental health. Like, I don't know. But if you want his dream for him more than he wants it for himself, you're operating from a deficit. If you were my daughter, I'd say, why would you even run the risk?
Couldn't agree more.
I'm glad I'm your little sister, though. Dennis, help! I'm always like, Dennis, what is this? Tony is giving you some hand claps over here, Dennis. Excellent. So my last question, and then I'll open it up if there's any last words that you either of you like to say, is what are some resources that you recommend to help Black men to cope and heal during this time?
Dennis said it. He said it perfect. He's been ringing the same message throughout the entire conversation. Community, right? Again, we need safe spaces. We need an outlet where we can be vulnerable, where we can cry, we can talk about our problems, our issues, and everything like that. So I think, again, going to a therapist, being in your community groups, men groups, or having a guy in your corner who you can call and is going to be honest with you. I think a lot of times, we have friends, but we don't have honest friends. We have a lot of yes men, as they call them. Yeah, bro, let's do that or do this. We don't take the time out to have men in our lives. And I had to learn this, and I'm speaking from experience. I had to really learn this, that I had no men in my corner who could be honest with me and I would accept it, right? I was afraid of being, criticized, corrected. I had my pride. But when you understand that people love you and want to see the best in you, community is so important. Again, having accountability partners. Again, going to therapy. Having that transition time to yourself, being able to do some of the things that you like to do, whether it be golf, different hobbies that give you that type of, comfort, that type of, confidence in everything that you are and that you want to be as a man. So I think it's super important, again, you got to have that circle of people who build you up, who speak life into you, who walk with you every day, who is a phone call away when you need them, who you can cry on their shoulder. People that will, like Dennis said, call you just to say, hey, I love you. I'm thinking about you. Hope your day's going well. You're a king, you're a champion. I mean, yeah, you do that for all your friends. I can speak from firsthand, right? So those things are amazing. And those things to me is what will get a man over the hump, and to be successful and to continue to be motivated. I want to talk about motivation. when you are around good men or good people and you see them doing well, it motivates you to do even better. It motivates you to do right. So if I have a friend that is serving in the community, I'm going to want to serve, right? If I have a friend that wants to change the world, I'm going to be motivated to change the world. You got to be around people who are doing things that inspire you deep down inside to your soul, and that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Julius. You do a good job at that as well. You're a natural encourager slash motivator.
Absolutely.
That is you. Wait, we got one more question from the audience, y'all. We're almost out of time, so get in. If you have any more questions, ladies, let us know real quick. What if your spouse doesn't believe in counseling or therapy?
Dennis, what's your question?
It's a difficult thing to navigate. I think number one, it's going to require patience. My hope is that you have the same belief system and values, and that you could begin to lean on your belief system. I subscribe to the Bible. I don't know if there's someone who subscribes to the Quran or who may have asked a question, but in context, being able to lean on your value system. Who are the most important people that this man honors and respects? Who's the one man that he holds in high esteem?
Yeah.
And allow that person to be the person who mediates you in trying to help him to get there without being manipulative. It needs to be a step that he takes sincerely. Now, I don't know where you may be in your marriage and whether there's considerations for separation, divorce, or otherwise, but it really requires that loving, caring approach, and the expectation I have is that there's no abuse involved, that this is just a relationship that is experiencing challenges. And maybe it's an honest conversation, sitting down with him and having an honest conversation. Again, I can only refer you back to understanding the nuances and understanding who he is, who you are, and who the two of you are together in the context of your relationship. But asking him what he wants or what his expectations are in the context of your relationship, and then using that as an opportunity to help the two of you establish new boundaries in the relationship. Maybe if you're not getting therapy, maybe you begin going to therapy, and over time you'll have the tools to navigate the nuances to effectively win him to the benefit of therapy and how that may pan out in your relationship. But without having the details and the nuances, I don't want to give like this prescriptive approach that may take something that isn't as bad and make it worse. I prefer that you leverage the man in his life that he highly esteems and begin to maybe win him to counseling by going to counseling yourself. Or if the two of you have a church community that you're involved in, maybe just encouraging him to participate in a men's group. Maybe there's an affinity group that he may be able to participate in if he likes golf, or maybe he likes cycling. I'm touting my own stuff. Shame on me, right? But whatever it is for him getting into a community where he has a man who's modeling it for him. If he's never seen it, it may be difficult for him to embrace.
Yes.
Now, I do have resources. I wanted to make sure I get these out real quick. The Seasons of a Man's Life by Daniel Levinson, a great book for men and for women too. It'll help you understand the different stages and phases of men and what they're going through. So there's that. The Seasons of a Man's Life by Daniel Levinson. The Way of the Superior Man by David Dita. That's a really good book for any man. It'll help him really understand who he is and how dynamic he is. The Way of the Superior Man by David Dita. I believe his last name is spelled Deida. And then there's the other book, Wild at Heart by John Eldridge, is another book that I recommend that men read or can read. Women can feel free to read it as well. And we have audiobooks now, so if he's not a person who likes to read, it makes good listening, in travel or whatever else. But I want to turn it back to the host. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Julia, did you have anything else you wanted to add before I do our final remarks?
Nothing else.
Okay, great. So if you're watching, I've posted the recommended books in the Beyond the Busyness chat. If you're not following me on Beyond the Busyness, please do so on Facebook and Instagram. And guess what? The very next session that we have coming up is on June 20th. And we're going to be focused on fathers because Father's Day is June 21st. So we have special guests from Furthering Fathering that will be joining me that day. And if you are interested in financial empowerment, this is something that can help you, your man, and your whole family. You can join me and my good friend Ty. She's a money mastery coach tomorrow at 12 o'clock Central, 1 o'clock Eastern, and 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for our Journey to Financial Freedom webinar. It's completely free, and the link is there in the chat. So please check it out. You have to register to join. It's completely free, and you can just share it out with whoever you would like. So I would like to thank our special guests today, Mr. Dennis Boyd and Mr. Julius Bayonne, for sharing and being vulnerable with our community and really teaching women what it is that we can do to support the wonderful Black men in our lives and continue to crown them king and treat them like the kings that they are. So thank you guys both for being amazing friends to me and always being, honorable and just overall amazing. So thank you guys for today.
Always a pleasure, Mia. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And thanks for the opportunity.
Well said. Thank you, Queen. Thank you so much.
Yeah. You're welcome, King. Well, with that, everyone, thank you for watching. Thank you, Ty, Tony, Britt. I saw Michelle on here. I had some guys watching. Thank you all for watching, and I hope this was beneficial. You can catch the replay if you're just coming in. Brittany says, thank you so much. We should do it again sometime. So, yes, we will be back on the 20th. And we can keep this going. I feel like this is a really good series. Everyone wants to hear, what you all have to say. And I feel like if we have these open communication forums, this is how we can bridge that gap, that mansplaining thing you were talking about. Yeah. Y'all can help us to be better communicators. You know what I mean? I think that's great. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. And please come tomorrow to the free webinar and then come back on the 20th for our Father's Day edition. Have a good day. Bye, everyone.